Priest for Life, welcome to today's program. As you well know, I've been speaking to you a lot about the upcoming movie Roe versus Wade. And today, we are so happy, so privileged to have the creator of that film, Nick Loeb, himself an actor and playing a lead role in this film. And he can tell us all about its history, its purpose, its message, which I'm convinced is going to help America understand this monumental decision and understand what's going on with the issue of abortion. Nick Loeb, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Father Frank, for having me. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, I appreciate all that you've done for this movie. I mean, you and I met some time ago, and I appreciate your involving me and also some other members of our team here at Priests for Life in the long and sometimes difficult process of getting something like this off the ground. Tell us, for starters, what inspired you to do this project?
Well, that's sort of an interesting story. So, I've been involved in the film business for a long time, and I was acting on a film, and a friend of mine, came to me and said, Nick, no one's ever made the movie Roe v. Wade. You should make this movie as your next film. And my first reaction was that, I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-choice, because my immediate reaction to Roe v. Wade is pro-choice.
Right.
He said, no. Did you realize, Nick, that Jane Roe converted and became pro-life? To realize she was manipulated and everything that happened along the way. And I like most Americans, I had heard of the case, but I didn't know the story.
Right.
And so I started researching and reading, and it found a fascinating story. The more I read, the more I uncovered. We read over 40 books to write the script, and it unraveled almost like an Oliver Stone JFK movie.
There was so much manipulation going on, so much lying, so much behind-the-scenes political pressure, and is that one of the key things that you wanted to bring out in this movie?
Yeah, that it's really, that's part of it. A lot of, not only political pressure, but the left really utilized the media to push their agenda, and they also. We call this fake news today, but it existed back then. So one of the protagonists in the film, a gentleman named Dr. Bernard Nathanson, they would come out and they would come out with statistics to help push their agenda. They would come out and say 1 million women every year were having illegal abortions and 10,000 of them were dying in back alleys. And later in his life, he came out and admitted that he made all of those up and none of it was true. And then they would plant those in the media. They would plant them in news stories, in Newsweek, and Time, and TV shows, and movies. They would, pay producers in Hollywood to run episodes with abortion as a theme in their TV shows. I mean, one TV show talked about how abortion was as simple as going to the dentist, and to promote this and change minds of Americans.
Nick, as you and I spoke when we were together, I had many moments with Bernard Nathanson, and I'll never forget it. Every time I think about what you just said, I'll never forget the day that he was with me and a small group of others and was talking about these statistics that he fed to the media, and he said, I can see it like it was yesterday, "Where did we get these statistics?" he said, and he put his hands up in the air, he looked up into the sky, and he said, "I don't know. We made them up out of thin air." So, I mean, what's so important here, I think that one of the powerful aspects of this project is that, as you say, people know, they've at least heard, it resonates when they hear the phrase Roe v. Wade. And yet they don't know the story. They don't know all the fascinating dynamics behind it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this movie, that it is really going to build on that initial awareness people have. And I think it's going to leave people with their jaws dropped about what really went on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think, more interesting, everybody thinks it's about a woman who wanted to change the laws, and it really wasn't. It was about a group of people that ran NARAL and Planned Parenthood that were scouring the country for a girl they could use and manipulate to bring through the courts to change the laws. It really wasn't based on what she wanted. And the way they found her, used her, and manipulated her is fascinating. I mean, one of the actual things in the film that you'll see in the epilogue of the film is not really part of the story, but one of Norma's original, Jane Roe, which is played by Norma McCorvey, is her real name. Her original lawyer was an adoption attorney in Texas named Henry McCluskey. And Henry is sort of the one who brought her to the forefront of Planned Parenthood and found her the lawyers and worked with Planned Parenthood to get her there. And he was sort of the only one not really involved in those groups that knew that everybody was lied to, that she was lied to and manipulated. But interestingly enough, 6 months after Roe, he was assassinated.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know who prosecuted his assassin, but it was Henry Wade.
It was Wade, right.
Yeah. So these are some really interesting conspiratorial facts that are all involved in sort of hiding the truth behind all of this.
You know, as you mentioned, Norma, of course, as you know, she and I were friends, and I brought her into the Catholic Church in 1998. I want to say something at this point that I'm sure not every interviewer with you has been able to say, but I know, with as sure as I'm sitting here, exactly what Norma would have thought and felt about your efforts here to make this film. And she would say a profound thank you, because the passion of her life from the time that she came out of the abortion industry altogether and was baptized and became pro-life was that the true story be told. She knew how manipulated she was. She was burdened by the damage that Roe v. Wade did. And although this film, and I think it's important for people to understand, is not a focus on Norma and her story, which is a story in itself, nevertheless, this is exactly what she wanted, that this story be told and that people would know what really went on in this decision. Let's talk about, yes.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, it's interesting that you're actually the first interviewer to come out and say that Norma is really not involved in this story. And that's really an important part, because so many people think she is. She was actually used, manipulated, thrown aside, and you never see her again. So
right.
You hit the nail on the head. Was never involved in Roe v. Wade. She was signed up. You never see her again because they had her. They didn't need her. And she didn't even find out about the decision until she read about it in the papers.
That's right. Well, she would always tell me, Father Frank, those pro-abortion people, they didn't like me, she said. They just tolerated me. And there was one funny incident, you may well know this, where there was some kind of a hearing in the, I think it was in the Senate. And she was sitting there with all these, powerhouse pro-abortion leaders, these other women sitting there. And, the hearing began, and they each had to introduce themselves. And when it came to Norma to introduce herself, she said, well, I'm Norma McCorvey, the Jane Roe of Roe v. Wade, and these other ladies sitting with me here, they're not, but they wish they were. And she was like that. She said, I'm going to throw it right back at them. They don't really like me, and I don't like them either. But let's get to the real. Tell me more about the drama that you want to let the public see in this film. What are some of the key dynamics in this interplay, as you say, between there were the pro-life forces that were kind of just getting organized as a movement there in the late 60s, early 70s when all this unfolded, and then of course there were the pro-abortion people were creating their organizations too. Tell us about some of the dynamics and that you think are the most important elements of this film.
Yeah, so the movie really shows the foundations of really the abortion movement. And the father of the abortion movement was a gentleman named Larry Lader. And Larry was inspired and mentored by a woman named Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood. He even wrote a biography about her. And he's the one who pushed the agenda and corralled, everyone together, including Bernard Nathanson, who was his best friend at the time, and they founded NARAL, and then they co-opted the women's movement and brought on Betty Friedan and they became really organized, had raised a lot of money, and the pro-lifers were really behind the eight ball the entire time for multiple reasons. I think, one, they never really thought that this could ever happen. Like, Henry Wade thought, how could anyone make a law to allow a woman to kill their own baby? It was just absurd to them. So they never really took it. They never took any of these cases seriously.
Right.
And they were very unorganized, very unfunded. And actually, the person who then, which is really, we don't really get into that much part of it, but the person who really founded the pro-life movement in America was actually your predecessor, was Father McHugh. And so, he's the one who really, pushed the pro-life. He created the National Right to Life. He put in a friend of his in charge, a guy named Juan Ryan, who was really sort of a placeholder until really, in my opinion, the second president of National Right to Life, which is really the biggest activist, the initial activist of the movement, which is a woman named Dr. Mildred Jefferson, who was the first African-American woman to graduate Harvard Medical School. She really sort of pioneered, really at that point, in sort of at the end of, towards the middle of the case in the 70s, 71, 72, to fight this movement. And she was really a leader, and we show her, in the movie, trying to fight these forces, and everybody sort of had their own opinion of how to tackle the pro-choice side and how to win. And interestingly enough, Mildred's goal, although she was a Baptist and believed very much in God, she believed if we were going to beat the pro-choicers, we had to make it about science. And she believed life began at conception, take God out of the argument, and beat them at their own game, which is interesting today because science is actually on our side. And now the left doesn't want to hear about science. So, it's kind of come full circle.
It's come full circle, and this is more a valuable message than ever before. As as you well know, Bernard Nathanson, as he went deeper into the science, as he used more frequently the ultrasound technology, as he saw the development right before his eyes of fetal surgery and so forth, it was like, okay, there's a conflict here in my mind on the scientific level. And of course, Mildred Jefferson being an MD herself, it was like, okay, this is a battle between science and politics, science and ideology. So I think it's very, and I think you have a good balance here in terms of, representing what happened, because obviously, as you said, Father James McHugh, who later became Bishop McHugh, had a key role. The Catholics had a key role in this. Religious believers had a key role. And I want to talk in a minute about the so-called Catholic strategy that the other side used. But at the same time, this is a dynamic that unfolded in the courtroom and in the arena of science. And as time has gone on, all the arguments that the pro-abortion people have tried to put forth over the years have been decimated primarily by science. And so this is more important to realize than ever before. And I always point out that people of faith, if you look at abortion from a Catholic vantage point, the starting point is not the Bible and it's not dogma. The starting point in the Catholic mindset actually is science and human reason. That's where it begins. Now, Dr. Nathanson, as you know, and as you have pointed out here, is he and his friends, Larry Lader and Betty Friedan and some of these others, they came up with a strategy of how to make this all work, how to launch the abortion industry. And part of that strategy, I know it'll be of particular interest to our listeners, was the so-called Catholic strategy. Tell us about that.
Well, it's really interesting. You must have read our script very, very well, because literally Bernard writes about it in his book, and really Larry came up with a three-pronged strategy. One was to convince the public that life did not begin at conception, and the other was the Catholic strategy. And everyone was like, well, what's the Catholic strategy? Well, they needed to come up with a villain, somebody to vilify. They needed to do that to set the minds in the people of Americans who was the bad guy. And so they decided on making it a group instead of an individual person, and that group was the Catholics. And the way they went about it was they would essentially utilize the media to vilify Catholics. So, for example, if the New York Times wrote a story about you, Father Frank. They would say Frank Pavone, a Catholic, did X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But they would never say Betty Friedan, a Jew,
Right.
did X, Y, and Z. They would only identify Catholics in the press, and it was really to set it in the minds of Americans that anything bad that would be done in any arena would be done by Catholics, and that was a big part of their Catholic strategy.
You know, I'll never forget, one of the first times I met Dr. Nathanson was at a clergy conference that was pulled together by Cardinal John O'Connor of New York. And I'll never forget what he said that time, that he repeated so many times after that. He looked at the clergy and he said, "We would have never gotten away with what we did if you had been united, purposeful, and strong." He wrote and he said, "We stole the issue from the church. We stole it. The church was asleep." And it is such a lesson for us, and it's one of the reasons that he ended up being such a strong supporter of our work at Priests for Life. He says we've got to get the clergy ahead of the curve here in pointing out to people the truth of what's going on.
And no one has it. You don't see a Hollywood movie where you show how the Catholics are vilified. Most Hollywood movies actually vilify the Catholics.
Yeah.
And so our film actually outlines, they sit there and they discuss their strategy, and then they go and implement it, and you see it exactly how they do it throughout our film. So I think this is a real eye-opener for the public. And the amazing thing about also Bernard was, probably a lot of people also don't know, at the end of his life, Cardinal O'Connor baptized him, and he converted to Catholicism.
Yes.
Baptized in St. Patrick's Cathedral. You know, we're the only movie in American history to be allowed to shoot inside St. Patrick's Cathedral, where we shot multiple scenes of the character Father McHugh, including Bernard Nathanson's baptism.
And I know Cardinal O'Connor would be very, very pleased about all of that. You know, he's someone that so many Catholics and others as well look up to even today. He was one of the greatest pro-life leaders in the church. Nick, how did this whole process impact you? As you mentioned, you have already been pro-life, of course. In fact, I really want to thank you here for your pro-life witness in many ways, personally, professionally. I mean, you have stood up for the cause. You've stood up for these vulnerable children. But tell us about the impact that the making of this movie has had on you and on the others that have worked with you on it.
But you know, it's very interesting. You know, for myself, I wasn't always pro-life, and I went through a very similar journey that Bernard did, although not a doctor. I was involved in abortions myself and had my own conversion. And the impact really, you know, of doing this movie, it really verified all my beliefs and made them stronger. And then it sort of also, you know, armed me with the facts and the ability to really be, you know, a spokesperson on this and understand not only the science but also the law behind all of this. But more importantly, you know, than myself are the people that I've seen be impacted. So I have 3 friends of mine who are pro-choice, who've read the script, who are now pro-life. There's an actor in the movie who started off acting in the movie pro-choice. He is now pro-life. One of our editors started editing the movie who was pro-choice, who is now pro-life. So I have 5 conversions under my belt, and the movie still hasn't been seen yet.
That is awesome.
So for me, that is, you know, I always said, if I could just save one life by making this movie, it would have been well worth it.
Absolutely. So true. Nick, what do you think? What are you looking at now as the time frame? I know that the movie was shown, I guess, for the first time in a public platform there at the National Religious Broadcasters. What do you see as the approximate time frame for this coming out? I know there's still work to be done. And how can people track the progress of it?
Yeah, we had a great showing of the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. We actually just sort of strung some, you know, all our clips together, means we're still in the editing process, putting together a rough cut of the film. We should be able to release the film. We're looking towards a fall, a late September, early October. Probably have a better idea in May, the exact date of when that would be. And if people want to get involved, they want to track, they want to host screenings, they can go to RoeVWade.com. Very simple, just like the name of the case, RoeVWade.com. They can sign up to go to screenings. They can send us their email. We can keep them updated on the progress. They can donate to our film to help with marketing efforts. Any involvement that people are willing to be, we're welcome with open arms.
That is great. Well, we'll continue to work side by side with you and get the word out about this. And we're so happy that you responded to the opportunity, really, to do this. It's going to be a great blessing to our movement and to our country. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with Nick Loeb, creator of the Roe v. Wade movie. Go to RoeVWade.com and keep up with this, and we'll certainly be talking a lot about it in the weeks and months to come. Nick Loeb, thank you again very, very much.